Venezuela's got more oil than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than literally anyone on Earth. And right now, the US is looking at it like a kid staring through a candy store window. But here's the thing, wanting something and actually being able to use it, two totally different stories. And in this case, that gap is packed with busted pipelines, worthless money, and one of the messiest economic collapses we've ever seen. So yeah, let's talk about why the biggest oil stash on the planet might not be worth what you think. Venezuela is sitting on about 300 billion barrels of proven oil. Put that in perspective, that's enough to run the whole planet for roughly 8 years straight. The US has been keeping an eye on this forever, especially now that energy security is back in the headlines. Gas prices jump, supply chains start shaking, and suddenly everybody remembers Venezuela exists. On paper, the math looks crazy. At today's prices, 300 billion barrels could be worth over $20 trillion. Yeah, trillion with a T. But if you know anything about Venezuela, you already see where this is headed. Let's rewind. Venezuela's oil isn't that light, easy stuff you get in Texas or the Middle East. Most of it's heavy crude. Think pouring olive oil versus pouring molasses. This stuff is thick, nasty, and loaded with sulfur. You don't just pull it out and call it a day. It has to be upgraded, processed, and refined with specialized equipment. For years, Venezuela handled this through PDVSA, their state oil company. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, PDVSA was fine, not amazing, but solid enough. They worked with international companies, kept things running, and were pumping about 3 million barrels a day. Money was flowing, economy was moving. Then Hugo Chavez took over, then Maduro. And what came next was basically a masterclass in how to wreck a cash cow. They fired thousands of experienced engineers and replaced them with political buddies. Maintenance stopped, refineries started falling apart, foreign companies got nervous and bounced. By 2020, production crashed below 500,000 barrels a day. For comparison, that's less than North Dakota. Yeah, North Dakota. Now, here's where the dream smacks straight into reality. Let's say the US wanted in tomorrow. Not invasion, just investment, partnerships, easing sanctions, whatever. The oil's there, but getting it out? Whole different story. First, you'd have to rebuild basically everything. Pipelines, rigs, refineries. We're talking tens of billions just to fix what's already broken. And this isn't some quick 2-year project. Experts say it'd take at least a decade to get production back to late 90s levels, probably longer. Second, you need special refineries for this heavy crude. The US has a few on the Gulf Coast, but they've spent years switching over to lighter shale oil. Going back isn't impossible, just expensive and slow. Third, and this is the big one, Venezuela would need to be a stable partner, and right now, it's not. Not even close. The hype says biggest reserves on Earth, energy independence, geopolitical power move. Reality says broken infrastructure, a government that's burned investors before, and oil that's harder and pricier to extract than almost anywhere else. Even if you magically fixed all the technical problems, you'd still be stepping into a political minefield. Venezuela's government has seized foreign assets, changed contracts, demanded controlling stakes. They don't exactly play nice with international markets. Putting money there isn't just risky, it's borderline wild. And even if everything somehow worked out, refineries rebuilt, production ramped up, oil flowing, how much does the US really gain? Not as much as you'd think, because oil is global. If Venezuela pumps an extra 1 million barrels a day, that oil goes on the world market. It doesn't get reserved for American drivers. Prices might dip a little, sure, but we're paying the same as everyone else. No special deal. Here's the twist nobody likes to talk about. The U.S. is already pumping more oil than ever, over 13 million barrels a day. We're a net exporter. We don't need Venezuela's oil. What we want is leverage, energy as a power move, a way to mess with OPEC, weaken Russia's grip on Europe, and keep China from getting too cozy with Caracas. Venezuela's oil isn't valuable because we're running out. It's valuable because we don't want someone else controlling it. But control gets real funny when the country itself is falling apart. Since 2014, Venezuela's economy has shrunk over 75%. Inflation hit 1,000,000% in 2018. Millions of people dipped out. The government prints money that's basically monopoly cash. This isn't a country one investment away from a comeback. This is a country that needs a full political and economic reset just to stop bleeding. And here's the hard truth. You can't fix corruption with cash. You can't rebuild trust with pipelines, and you can't turn a failed state into a reliable energy partner just because there's valuable stuff underground. You know what's crazy? There are people in Venezuela sitting on top of trillions in oil who can't afford gas. That's not poetic, that's real life. It's like winning the lottery, realizing the tickets in a language you don't understand, in a country that doesn't honor it, and the prize is a check that bounces. And this isn't just about Venezuela. It's a preview of what happens in resource-rich countries with shaky governments. Congo's got most of the world's cobalt. Afghanistan's sitting on rare earth minerals. These places have what the modern economy needs, but geology alone doesn't cut it. You need roads, stability, rules, trust, and Venezuela proves that having the goods underground doesn't mean you can cash in. So, will Venezuela's oil ever make the U.S. rich? Probably not. We might buy some, maybe invest someday if politics change, but the fantasy of unlocking 300 billion barrels and striking it rich, that's not how this works. The oil's real, the reserves are real, but the space between what's underground and what you can actually sell is filled with decades of bad decisions, instability, and the cold truth that geology is only half the game. Venezuela's oil might make somebody rich one day, but it's going to take way more than drills and pipelines. Meanwhile, the country with the most oil on Earth can't keep its own lights on.